air as Elena Carter wheeled her cleaning cart down the gleaming hallway of Pierce Industries. She had been working the night shift for the past 6 months, scrubbing marble floors and wiping down glass panels in an empire built by a man who didn't even know she existed. Alexander Pierce. Billionaire. CEO. Ruthless businessman. And as of this moment, the one man she avoided at all costs. Elena had learned how to be invisible. She had to. Her life depended on it. For years, she kept her head down, focused on her son, Ethan, and never let herself get distracted by the powerful men who roamed these hallways. Especially not the one who unknowingly held the key to her deepest secret. But fate, it seemed, had a cruel sense of humor. Elena pushed open the heavy office door, expecting an empty room like always. Instead, her heart slammed against her ribs. There, in the center of the room, was Ethan, her 5-year-old son. And he was hugging Alexander Pierce. "Daddy?" Ethan's small voice rang through the air, filled with uncontainable joy. Elena's entire world tilted. Her vision blurred, her stomach plummeting into a pit of ice. Ethan was hugging Alexander, clinging to him with the trust and familiarity of a child who had just found something precious. And the most terrifying part? Alexander wasn't pushing him away. Elena's breath came in sharp, shallow gasps. No, no, this wasn't happening. Her pulse roared in her ears as she took an unsteady step forward. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Both Ethan and Alexander turned at the sound of her voice. Ethan's face broke into a beaming smile. "Mommy?" Alexander, however, didn't smile. His gray eyes, so much like Ethan's, narrowed, dark, and unreadable. "Elena Carter," he said, his deep voice laced with quiet authority. She flinched. Not just at his voice but at the way he said her name. Like he knew her. Like he remembered her. Which was impossible. They had never met. Not properly. Not officially. Her throat tightened as she dragged her gaze back to her son. "Ethan, sweetheart, what are you doing here?" Ethan pulled back from Alexander and turned to her, completely oblivious to the storm raging between the two adults. "I found my real daddy," he announced proudly. Elena's stomach twisted so hard she thought she might be sick. "Excuse me?" Her voice came out strangled. Ethan beamed, nodding excitedly. "I saw his picture on TV, Mommy. He looks just like me. I knew he was my daddy, so I asked Auntie Sam to bring me here." Elena's blood ran cold. Samantha. Her best friend. Ethan's babysitter. Her traitorous best friend. She clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. "Where is Sam now?" she asked, her voice deadly calm. "She left," Ethan said cheerfully. "She said I should talk to Daddy alone." Elena swore internally. Oh, she was going to kill her best friend for this. But first she had to get her son out of this room. She forced a smile, though her heart was hammering wildly. "Okay, sweetheart. That's enough excitement for today. Let's go home." She reached for Ethan's hand, but before she could take a step, a deep, commanding voice stopped her. "Not so fast." Elena's breath hitched. "Alexander." His voice was calm. Too calm. A shiver ran down her spine as she turned back to face him. He was watching her closely, his sharp, calculating gaze flickering between her and Ethan. "Real daddy?" he repeated, his voice slow, measured. "Is that what he said?" Elena forced herself to hold his gaze. "It's a misunderstanding," she said quickly. "Now if you'll excuse us." "I don't think so." Alexander's voice was smooth as silk, but there was steel underneath. Elena stiffened. Alexander turned to Ethan, his features unreadable. "How old are you, kid?" Ethan grinned. "I'm 5. Pause. A long, dangerous pause. Alexander's eyes flickered with something dark, something calculating. Elena's breath caught. She saw the exact moment realization hit him. 5 years old. Which meant Elena's stomach clenched painfully. She knew what he was thinking, what he was calculating, and she couldn't let him reach that conclusion. She grabbed Ethan's hand. "We're leaving?" But before she could take another step, Alexander's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Elena." She froze. There was something different in his tone now. Something dangerous. She turned slowly, her heart hammering. Alexander's gaze was locked onto hers, cold and relentless. "Who is his father?" he asked, his voice deceptively soft. Elena's pulse pounded. She had two options. What? Or run. Because telling him the truth? That was never an option. She lifted her chin, forcing steel into her voice. "It's none of your business." A muscle ticked in Alexander's jaw. Wrong answer. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and pressed a button. "Vincent," he said smoothly, speaking to his assistant. "Cancel my morning meetings." Elena stiffened. What the hell was he doing? "I have something more important to handle," Alexander continued. Her stomach clenched. He wasn't going to let her leave. Not without answers. Panic surged through her veins. She needed to get Ethan out of here now. She straightened, forcing a calm expression. "Look, Mr. Pierce." "Alexander," he corrected smoothly. Her jaw tightened. "Mr. Pierce, I don't know what you think is happening here, but I need to take my son home." Alexander leaned back against his desk, crossing his arms over his broad chest. "No." Elena sucked in a sharp breath. "No," she repeated, her voice rising. He tilted his head, studying her like a puzzle he was about to solve. "Elena," he murmured, his tone thoughtful. "You're a cleaner. You work here, yet I've never noticed you before. And now, suddenly, you show up in my office with a 5-year-old child who looks exactly like me?" Elena's blood ran cold. She gripped Ethan's hand tighter. "This is just a coincidence?" Alexander's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. A slow, knowing smirk. "Elena," he said, his voice dangerously soft, "do you really expect me to believe that?" Elena's heart pounded against her ribs. She needed to think. Fast. Because one thing was painfully clear. Alexander Pierce wasn't going to let this go. And for the first time in 5 years, Elena knew. Her secret was no longer safe. Elena's fingers trembled as she gripped Ethan's hand, her mind spinning with ways to escape. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not like this. She had spent the past 5 years hiding, keeping her life quiet, staying far away from the kind of power and influence that Alexander Pierce commanded. And now her son, the very secret she had sworn to protect, was standing in the arms of the one man who could shatter everything. "I told you," she said, keeping her voice even. "This is just a misunderstanding. We'll be leaving now." But Alexander didn't move. He stood tall, arms crossed, his sharp gaze locked onto her. "Not without answers," he said smoothly. Elena clenched her jaw. "I don't owe you anything. Don't you?" His gaze flickered to Ethan, who was staring up at him with wide, innocent eyes. "Your son seems to think otherwise." A fresh wave of panic surged through her. She knew men like Alexander. Powerful. Relentless. Dangerous. If he suspected even for a second that Ethan was his. "No. I can't let that happen." She exhaled sharply and turned to Ethan, forcing a bright smile. "Sweetheart, say goodbye. We're leaving." Ethan's little face scrunched in confusion. "But Mommy?" "Now Ethan." Her voice wavered, betraying the fear bubbling inside her. She tugged his hand and started toward the door. But before she could reach it, click. The sound of the door locking behind her sent a chill racing down her spine. Her head snapped around. Alexander stood near his desk, his expression unreadable. But there was something predatory in his eyes. Something that told her he had no intention of letting her walk away. "Open the door, Mr. Pierce," she said, keeping her voice controlled. Alexander leaned against his desk, perfectly composed. "We both know this conversation isn't over." Panic coiled tighter in her chest. "What do you want?" she demanded. His gaze darkened. "The truth?" Elena swallowed hard. 5 years. She had spent 5 years burying the truth. And now, in a matter of minutes, it was slipping through her fingers. Her heart pounded as she squared her shoulders. "The truth is, I'm a single mother doing my job. My son saw your picture on TV and got a silly idea in his head. That's all." Alexander's lips curved slightly. Not a smile, more like a silent challenge. "I don't believe in coincidences, Elena." She stiffened. He took a slow step forward, his piercing gaze roaming over her face, studying her like a puzzle he was about to solve. "Elena Carter," he murmured, his tone almost thoughtful. You said you don't owe me anything. But the way you're acting says otherwise. Her breath caught in her throat. I'm acting like any mother would when a stranger is questioning her child, she snapped. Alexander chuckled, the sound dark and knowing. A stranger? He gestured at Ethan, who was still standing by her side, watching the exchange with wide, curious eyes. Your son doesn't seem to think so. Elena tightened her grip on Ethan's hand. I don't care what you think, she said. We're leaving. She reached for the doorknob. But Alexander's voice stopped her cold. Do you remember the first time we met? Her fingers froze. Her entire body froze. She turned slowly, her breath caught in her throat. What did you say? She whispered. Alexander tilted his head, watching her closely. 6 years ago. A hotel room. A night neither of us remember. A bolt of ice shot through her veins. She forced herself to keep breathing. He remembers? No. No, he can't. She had spent years convincing herself that he didn't know, that he had woken up that morning just as confused as she was, that he had forgotten. But as she stared into those steel-gray eyes, she realized the terrifying truth. He hadn't forgotten. Not completely. Her heart slammed against her ribs. I don't know what you're talking about, she lied. Alexander's gaze darkened. Don't you? Elena forced herself to stay calm. I don't remember anything about that night. That makes two of us. Her chest constricted. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The tension in the room was thick, suffocating. Then, Alexander exhaled, rubbing a hand over his jaw. I was drunk, he admitted. I remember that much. Elena swallowed hard. So was I. I remember waking up alone, he continued, his voice lower now. The room smelled like perfume. Expensive. Like jasmine. His gaze flickered to her. Like you? Elena's breath hitched. He took another step toward her, his presence overwhelming. I never saw her face, he murmured. I didn't even know her name. Elena clenched her fists. Don't react. Don't show weakness. Because if he knew, if he even suspected the truth, he would never let her go. She forced herself to breathe. That night has nothing to do with me. Silence. A long, dangerous silence. Then, finally, Alexander exhaled. We'll see. Elena blinked. What? His smirk returned. I've already sent your son's DNA for testing. Her blood turned to ice. She staggered back, clutching Ethan close. You, her voice broke. You did what? Alexander's expression remained infuriatingly calm. I took his napkin from dinner. A quick test should tell me everything I need to know. Her heart stopped. Terror gripped her. No, 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 no. The test came back positive. If he knew, he could take Ethan from her. Elena's entire body shook. You had no right. Alexander's smirk disappeared. If he's mine, he said coldly, I have every right. Tears burned in her eyes. No, she whispered. You don't. You don't get to walk into our lives and your son walked into mine. Silence. The truth hung between them. And for the first time, Elena felt completely powerless. Because no matter what she said, no matter how hard she fought, Alexander Pierce was going to find out the truth. And when he did, her life would never be the same. Elena had never felt so trapped in her life. The moment she and Ethan left Pierce Industries, she had barely been able to breathe. Her heart pounded violently, her hands clammy as she gripped the steering wheel of her worn-out car. Ethan, blissfully unaware of the storm raging inside her, sat in the back seat, humming to himself. A DNA test. Alexander had sent for a DNA test. A shudder racked through her body. In a matter of days he would know the truth. And then what? Would he take Ethan from her? Would he drag her into a custody battle? Would he hate her? Panic gripped her chest like a vice. She couldn't let this happen. She had to think. Fast. Mommy? Ethan's sweet voice pulled her out of her spiraling thoughts. She inhaled sharply, forcing a smile as she met his gaze in the rearview mirror. Yes, sweetheart? Are you mad at me? Her heart clenched. Oh, baby. She pulled the car to a stop in front of their small apartment building and turned to face him. Of course not, sweetheart. Why would you think that? Ethan fidgeted with his hands. Because I wanted to find my daddy. Pain sliced through her. Her son had spent years searching for something she had worked so hard to hide. She reached back, cupping his cheek gently. I love you, Ethan. And I'm not mad at you, okay? He nodded, his little face still troubled. Elena swallowed the lump in her throat and turned away before he could see the fear still lingering in her eyes. 2 days later, Elena was scrubbing the conference room table when the air in the room shifted. A presence. Him. She didn't need to look up to know Alexander was standing there. She could feel his gaze burning into her like a wildfire. Her grip on the rag tightened. She kept wiping, pretending she didn't notice him. Maybe if she ignored him, he would go away. No such luck. Elena. Her breath hitched at the way he said her name, deep, firm, full of barely restrained emotion. She straightened slowly, inhaling deeply before finally turning around. And when she did, her stomach dropped. Alexander stood by the door, a single sheet of paper in his hands. The DNA results. Elena's world stopped. His gray eyes locked onto hers, cold and sharp. He took a step forward, his movements precise, controlled. He lifted the paper. Do you have anything to say before I open this? Her heart thundered in her chest. She could lie. She could deny everything. But the truth was already in his hands. Her silence was all the confirmation he needed. With slow, deliberate movements, Alexander unfolded the paper and scanned the results. The room was dead silent, until he exhaled sharply. Then he looked at her. And for the first time ever, Alexander Pierce looked completely shaken. He's mine, he said, voice low, almost to himself. Elena swallowed, her throat dry. Yes. A heavy silence followed. Then, damn you, Elena. She flinched as his voice sliced through the air, raw and filled with something she couldn't quite place. Rage, disbelief, hurt? You knew, he accused, his hands clenching at his sides. You knew this entire time and you didn't tell me? Elena forced herself to stand tall. I was protecting him. From me? His eyes blazed. You think I would have hurt my own son? No, Alexander, I think you wouldn't have wanted him at all, she snapped, her voice trembling. You don't even remember what happened that night? Alexander froze. Elena's breath came fast and uneven. You were drunk, she whispered, voice hoarse. I was drugged. That night was never supposed to happen. A muscle ticked in his jaw. And you thought keeping my son from me was the right solution? Elena's fists clenched. I thought you'd throw money at the problem and walk away. Alexander stiffened, something flickering in his eyes. She had struck a nerve. Is that really what you think of me? His voice was quiet now, eerily calm. Elena held his gaze, refusing to back down. I don't know what to think of you, Alexander, she admitted. All I know is that Ethan is my whole world. And I won't let you take him from me. A tense silence filled the room. Alexander stepped closer and suddenly the air between them crackled. His voice was dangerously soft when he spoke. You think I'd take him? Elena's pulse jumped. He was too close. Too intense. His scent, expensive cologne and something purely him, wrapped around her, making it impossible to think. I don't know what you'll do, she murmured. His eyes searched hers. You kept my son from me for 5 years. And you expect me to just walk away? She swallowed. No. Alexander's lips pressed into a thin line. Then he inhaled sharply and took a step back. Fine, he said, his voice controlled once more. Then we do this my way. Elena frowned. Your way? He slid his hands into his pockets, watching her carefully. I want to spend time with my son. Elena hesitated. And I want you there too. Her breath caught. What? He smirked, but there was no humor in it. You don't trust me? Fine. Let's fix that. Before she could argue, he pulled out his phone and typed something. A moment later, her own phone buzzed in her pocket. She frowned and pulled it out. It was a calendar invite. Dinner with Alexander and Ethan, 7 p.m. Elena's head snapped up. You're inviting me to dinner? He lifted a brow. Is that a problem? She opened her mouth to argue, but something in his expression stopped her. This wasn't just about dinner. This was about control. This was the beginning of something dangerous. something neither of them were prepared for. And yet, a tiny, treacherous part of her whispered, "What if?" Elena exhaled sharply. "Fine," she said. "One dinner." Alexander's smirk deepened. "We'll see." And just like that, everything changed. Elena had no idea why she agreed to this. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the way Alexander looked at her, like he wouldn't take no for an answer. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the way Ethan lit up when Alexander called him son. She told herself she was doing this for Ethan, that she was just trying to protect him from disappointment. But deep down she knew the truth. This wasn't just about Ethan. This was about Alexander. And the way he was slowly breaking through every wall she had spent years building. 7 p.m., Alexander's penthouse. Elena stood outside the grand double doors of Alexander's penthouse, her pulse racing. The building was nothing short of a palace, a towering structure with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline. She tightened her grip on Ethan's hand. "Remember, sweetheart, this is just dinner." Ethan grinned up at her. "I know, Mommy. But I'm so excited." Elena's heart clenched. Ethan had never had a father figure before. She had done her best, given him love, protection, and security, but a part of her knew that there were some things she could never replace. And that terrified her. Before she could second-guess her decision, the door swung open. Alexander stood in the doorway, dressed in a crisp, dark blue button-up with the sleeves rolled up just enough to showcase his strong forearms. Damn him. He looked too good. Too confident. Too dangerous. "Right on time," he murmured, stepping aside. Elena hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around and run. But Ethan, completely oblivious, rushed inside. Wow. Ethan's eyes widened as he took in the grand living space. "This place is so cool." Alexander smirked. "Glad you approve, kid." Elena exhaled sharply and stepped inside, her entire body on high alert. The penthouse was exactly what she expected. Modern, sleek, and screaming of wealth. Black leather couches, marble floors, and an entire wall made of glass, showcasing the city lights. It was the opposite of their tiny apartment. She folded her arms. "Impressive?" Alexander's lips quirked. "You sound surprised." "I'm not," she said. "You've always struck me as the type to enjoy luxury." Alexander chuckled, his eyes glinting with something unreadable. "And what type do you think I am, Elena?" She swallowed, her cheeks warming. "Stop it. Do not get distracted by his voice." Before she could respond, Ethan tugged on Alexander's sleeve. "Do you have a game room?" Alexander smirked. "I have something better." Ethan's eyes lit up. "Really?" Alexander nodded toward a hallway. "Go check it out. First door on the right." Ethan took off running. Elena immediately panicked. "Wait, Ethan, be careful." "He's fine," Alexander said smoothly. "Let him explore." Elena turned to him, frowning. "He's not used to places like this." Alexander's smirk softened. "Then maybe he should be." Her stomach tightened. She didn't like the implications in his voice. She folded her arms. "Alexander, let's be clear about something. This dinner doesn't change anything." His expression darkened slightly. "Doesn't it?" "No," she said firmly. "You might be Ethan's father, but you don't get to just waltz into our lives and act like you belong." His jaw tightened. "I do belong." Her heart stumbled. "Ethan is mine, Elena," he said, his voice low and deadly serious. "You kept him from me for 5 years. And now that I know, do you really think I'm going to step aside?" Elena inhaled sharply. The intensity in his gaze overwhelmed her. Before she could form a response, Ethan rushed back in, holding a toy plane. "Mommy, look. Mr. Pierce has the coolest toys." Alexander smirked. "Mr. Pierce?" He arched a brow at Elena. Ethan blinked. "Should I call you Daddy instead?" Elena's stomach dropped. A thick silence filled the room. Alexander's gaze softened, but Elena saw the flicker of emotion in his eyes. Slowly, he crouched down in front of Ethan. "You can call me whatever you're comfortable with, kid." Ethan grinned. "Okay." He turned to Elena. "Mommy, can we stay longer?" Elena hesitated. She wanted to say no. She needed to say no. But the way Ethan looked at Alexander, his eyes full of pure excitement, made her hesitate. She swallowed hard. A little longer. Ethan cheered and ran back toward the game room. Elena turned back to Alexander, expecting him to gloat. But he wasn't smirking anymore. Instead, he was watching her intently. "Elena," he said quietly, stepping closer. She tensed. "What?" He studied her, his voice softer than before. "You really thought I wouldn't have wanted him?" Her throat tightened. "I didn't know what to think," she admitted. "You're Alexander Pierce. You don't exactly have a reputation for stability." A flicker of something, pain? Regret? Crossed his face. "I never had a reason to be stable," he murmured. "Until now." Her breath caught. He was too close. The air between them crackled. She could smell his cologne. Masculine, expensive, utterly intoxicating. Her pulse pounded as his gaze dropped to her lips. For one wild, reckless second she thought he was going to kiss her. And the worst part? She wanted him to. Her breath hitched. Her fingers curled at her sides. She needed to move. To say something. But before she could, Ethan's voice rang out. "Mommy? Mr. Pierce. Come play with me." The spell broke. Elena exhaled sharply and took a step back. Alexander's jaw tightened, his eyes dark with something unreadable. Then slowly he smirked. "This isn't over," he murmured. Elena's heart stammered. She turned away before he could see how much his words affected her. And as she followed Ethan's voice, one thing became painfully clear. She was losing control. And Alexander Pierce? He knew it. 3 days later. Elena was losing control. She could feel it slipping, like grains of sand slipping through her fingers, no matter how tightly she tried to hold on. It had been 3 days since the dinner at Alexander's penthouse. 3 days of Ethan talking nonstop about his cool dad. 3 days of Alexander texting her, calling her. 3 days of her heart betraying her, wanting something she knew she couldn't have. And now here she was standing outside Pierce Industries trying to convince herself she had everything under control. She inhaled sharply and stepped inside. She was here because Alexander had requested a meeting. Nothing more. Nothing personal. She just had to be professional, strong, detached. And most importantly, she had to keep her heart out of this. But the moment she stepped into Alexander's office, she knew she was screwed. Because he wasn't sitting behind his massive desk. He was standing near the window holding Ethan in his arms. And her son, her sweet, careful, cautious son, was laughing. Her chest tightened. Alexander looked up, and when their eyes met, something warm and unreadable flickered in his expression. "Elena." His voice was deep, smooth, dangerously soft. She swallowed hard. "What is he doing here?" Alexander smirked. "You're late. So I had Samantha bring him here. Her traitorous best friend." Elena shot Ethan a look. "Sweetheart, you can't just leave without telling me." Ethan grinned. "But I wanted to see Daddy." Her heart stumbled. Daddy. The word was still new, still strange, but Ethan said it so naturally, like he had been saying it his whole life. And worse? Alexander didn't correct him. He just held Ethan a little closer. "Elena, we need to talk," Alexander said smoothly. She straightened, forcing herself to stay calm. "About what?" He studied her for a long moment. Then, "Your sister." Her stomach dropped. "What?" she breathed. Alexander's expression darkened. "I've been looking into her." A chill ran down Elena's spine. She had spent years trying to forget what her sister had done. And now Alexander was digging into the past. She forced a shaky breath. "Why?" His gaze hardened. "Because I don't believe in coincidences, Elena." Her pulse raced. "You were drugged that night," he continued, his voice dangerously low. "And I was drunk. Someone orchestrated that. And now I want to know who." "No. No, no, no. This couldn't be happening." "I don't want to talk about this," she said, turning to leave. But before she could take a step, Alexander was in front of her, blocking her path. Too close. Too intense. His scent wrapped around her, expensive cologne and raw masculinity. Her breath hitched. "You don't get to walk away from this," he murmured. "Not anymore." Her pulse pounded. She should move. Step back. But she couldn't. Because his gaze was locked onto hers, burning with something dark and unreadable. Something that made her knees weak. "Elena," he murmured. And then he reached out, brushed his fingers along her arm. And just like that, the entire world shifted. A sharp breath escaped her lips. "Alexander." But before she could finish, his lips were on hers. Demanding. Unrelenting. Devastating. A rush of heat flooded her veins. Her body betrayed her, arching into him as his arms wrapped around her, pulling her flush against his chest. The kiss was fire and fury, a battle of need and anger. He kissed her like he was claiming her, like he had been waiting 5 years for this moment. And the worst part? She kissed him back. Her fingers curled into his shirt, pulling him closer, drinking in the taste of him, dark, rich, intoxicating. For one perfect, reckless moment, she let herself forget everything. Forget the past. Forget the betrayal. Forget the fear. But then, reality crashed back in. She pulled away, her breath ragged. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. Alexander's stormy gray eyes darkened. "Elena?" "No," she repeated, voice shaking. This can't happen." Something flickered across his face, something almost like hurt. But it was gone in an instant. And in its place? Determination. "This isn't over," he said, his voice dangerously soft. Her heart stammered. She turned away, ignoring the way her lips still burned from his kiss. Ignoring the dangerous truth pressing against her chest. Because for the first time in 5 years, she wasn't sure if she wanted to fight him, or if she wanted to fall. The scent of freshly brewed coffee